In this session, we will talk about ethics and professional standards in the security world. People may not initially understand why this is important to be discussed, but security officers must view themselves as standard bearers within the communities they serve and recognize they are appropriately held to higher standards. While they may not be titled officially as public servants, security officers do serve and protect people in many different ways. But any servant, be they government authorities such as police or other professionals, there is great disappointment when such personnel stray from their sworn oaths or their scopes of employment. This often stems back to the character of the person, absolutely. But regardless, the industry employing such personnel also share a duty and responsibility to train and hold these personnel accountable. This lack of training is often reflected upon when it's too late, damaging the reputation of the security industry and casting negative aspersions upon an overwhelming majority of those who do the job correctly every day. So this section is titled Ethics and Professional Standards. So let's concentrate on the ethics side of things first. Let's give everybody a moment to assess their own individual definition of ethics. Just think that aloud in your mind, if you will. Okay, so depending on what you've come up with, a simple definition of ethics, according to the dictionary, are rules of behavior based on ideas of what is morally good and bad. And obviously a person's morals would be standards of behavior or beliefs concerning what is and what is not acceptable for them to do. The security profession has existed in some format most likely since the beginning of civilization, realistically. The idea that certain persons are being charged with the protection of others. There are many reasons why we need security professionals, and that accounts for their existence as a profession. One obvious reason would be the idea that unethical people exist amongst us. There will always be people, individuals who will seek to act improperly, violate the rules, misbehave for a number of different reasons. In turn, there will always be people, clients, who are vulnerable, seeking safety, security, peace of mind, protection of their assets and properties. And for that reason, the security industry is well suited to be highly relevant as law enforcement resources continue to be taxed and spread thin. With increased perceptions and realities of rising crime rates, this too will necessitate the need for additional layers of protection. It's often overlooked, but security officers, like our professional first responders, are normally the initial people on the scenes even before the police, fire, EMS, or other responders can arrive and interact. And most importantly, security officers, they interact with people in crisis, victims of crime. Often I would tell security officers that I was hiring, training, interacting with is they will be dealing with people often on the worst day of their life. We could be talking about somebody who's a victim of a crime, somebody that has a major medical emergency, somebody that has committed a crime even. These are not good days. These are not good interactions that we're necessarily having with people. And as security officers, we have to prepare ourselves to understand that's how we're going to be interacting with a lot of these people, and a big reason why we're there and why we're present on our properties. So when we examine the idea of security professionals being called upon to be ethical and have good morals, the reasoning behind that is that security personnel hold the public's trust, and like all public servants, they are appropriately held to that higher standard. Security officers should understand their ethics must be of the highest caliber, and that's because they are in an integrity profession. That's exactly how we're recognized. This also accounts for why we go out of our way in the industry to ensure the integrity of security officers. And we do that with some of the things that we've already talked about. Background checks on security officers, drug testing, checking their driving history records, maybe even checking, previous job references. All of those things go into speaking for somebody's character and the things that we want to be assured of in the industry, because we're putting these people out into the field to serve the public. Security personnel have the responsibility of protecting property and people's personal safety. We've already established that. And this is not a duty that should be undertaken lightly. Conversely, for any public servant to use his or her position to gain some type of advantage, to steal from their clients or the people that they're charged with protecting, cause any type of harm to them, these are realistically among the most serious offenses against society. So most employers and agencies strive for their employees to be honest, trustworthy, and reliable. And yes, these things sound cliché to a certain degree. And while these things are, the moral and ethical foundations of most employees out there, it's especially important for us as security officers. So just think for a moment about the properties secured by private security officers. Oftentimes we're talking about multi-million-dollar venues that are secured sometimes by two, even one security officer, perhaps on an overnight shift or when a business is closed. Now, an honest person would probably never imagine how this allows them for any indecent opportunities. Now, security officers often have unlimited access and opportunities to client facilities, equipment, materials, oftentimes the inventory that business survives on. Security personnel most often work out in a field environment. They're not going to a home office every day. They're going right to the client location often, where their work may not be consistently supervised. And this is going to require them individually to have the willpower to operate with integrity, independent of oversight. Think of all the company equipment that security personnel might potentially have access to. So we can be looking at the things that we're using every day at our property locations, the vehicles, the computer equipment, anything else that the client offers that our companies, security companies actually give to security officers. These items, they have to be treated like they're your own property. They shouldn't be abused or mishandled or destroyed. And if something does happen with them, you have to have the integrity to make sure you're reporting that, so those matters are handled accordingly. So security personnel are going to be the people that are documenting events on their properties, whether it be your patrol rounds or whether it be an incident that occurs at your property. All of these things need to be documented accurately and truthfully. They're official records. Any acts of omission, which would be leaving something out of a report because we're a little bit too lazy to really include the information that we need to, or adding anything potentially, falsifying a record, are acts of malfeasance. Security personnel need to be vigilant for people attempting to offer them favors, that free lunch, that free coffee, whatever it might happen to be. There's often always some type of a payback for something like that. Now, when we're overseeing, the management of the property, we're kind of the gatekeepers over there. There are people that are going to look to take advantage of that. And if they, impose a favor on us, they're going to want something back for that sometimes. And you don't want to be in that position of a security officer as looking to owe somebody. Remember also the team environment you operate in as a security officer with your fellow security personnel. Allowing your personal feelings of animosity. Let's say that you borrowed money from somebody and you didn't repay it back as soon as they expected. There's obviously going to be some bad feelings between you. They're potentially even going to feel cheated. You're gambling, you're doing other things that are inappropriate. When you're dealing with other employees, especially if we're talking about financial situations where people don't trust you anymore, you have to realize these are the same people that potentially are going to be coming to your aid one day when you might be in trouble. Protection of persons and properties requires you to utilize all of your senses that are available to you. To be agile, nimble, ready to respond. If you're unprepared to do so, others, including your coworkers, may suffer as a result. All of us are late once in a while for something. There's something that comes up on your way to work, something that's unexpected that you deal with. Those things happen. And every once in a while, some people, you have to call out. You're sick, you have some kind of an issue, so on and so forth. That's also unanticipated. These things happen. But people, in particular security employees that do this chronically, they're chronically late, they're chronically calling out, they do jeopardize the people they work with. If you're due to report at 10 a.m. and let's say you're 10 minutes late all the time, and one day when an incident and your fellow officers are involved with and they need some backup happens at 10:05, all right, and you're not there. Or maybe a person needs some medical help within that first 10 minutes when you're not there. Hopefully you're beginning to see how and why security personnel absolutely need to be reliable and why it means something different in our industry. When you are at work, are you fully involved? Are you situationally aware? Are you paying attention to the hazards that you and your fellow officers may be vulnerable to? Are you listening to the radio to see if anybody needs some help? Things can happen very quickly without any notice, okay? And often when you least expect it. Working in the security industry for almost 30 years, I certainly have heard my share of perspectives about the industry. And oftentimes there are some interesting responses when people reflect upon it. What their perception of the industry might be overall, even the personnel that work in the industry having their idea and their perspective of what it is. Normally people who are entering the industry new have a more positive view. While sometimes people that are veterans of the industry, unfortunately, might have a little bit more of a pessimistic view. Still, other persons from outside who are not even involved in security work tend to be, at times, somewhat harsh in their assessments, or they may be judging a profession they truly don't know or understand, not to mention would ever dare to work in. Unfortunately, people often jump to conclusions not only about the security industry, but other industries as well. Think about some of the things you've heard people say about lawyers or attorneys, how they might support any client as long as they're getting paid until someone needs a lawyer to actually defend them. Or, we say contractors might be unreliable or they rip you off until we figure out how intensive such jobs might be. Even perceptions about law enforcement are jaded at times, and while they too are held to appropriately a higher standard, they often make life-altering decisions in a second, or routinely find themselves in a position that they need to save somebody's life, or be the one who runs towards gunfire as opposed to everybody else who's running away from it. Truthfully, any industry can be critiqued in a negative light. As a security officer, you almost need to dismiss some of the attitudes that you're hearing out there, as certain people are unlikely to change their opinions. But in turn, those in the industry are sometimes to blame. We just need to take a look at social media or YouTube or the internet, and you will find countless videos and stories of security personnel that perhaps are going too far. They're doing the wrong thing, and there are no excuses. These people are out there, unfortunately. I might argue again that there is the idea of lack of training, lack of integrity checks that contribute to these type of things. Security industries often find themselves focused on profit margins rather than safety or perceptions of their industry. I've been in security management, and I firmly grasp the idea of companies needing to remain profitable so they can be viable, and that's not easy. As stated before, the industry generally does not share a wide profit margin. Yet when we allow standards to drop or fail to adequately train our personnel, these actions are reciprocal, and they impact our employees, our clients, and those we promise to protect. And yes, I've heard all of the jokes, and some of you in the industry probably have as well. I have also seen security officers save lives, run to the aid of those who are vulnerable, find a lost child, comfort the injured, and yes, deal with people sometimes on that worst day of their life, as we explained before. In reality, our industry has good and decent people in the majority who do their job every day, and oftentimes without recognition. This is a photo of 4 security officers who worked on my staff a few years ago. And they're being honored by the American Society for International Security at this particular event. And there are actually 5 security officers. One of these were not able to be present for the ceremony, but these 4 officers were involved in a rather serious incident at our property where somebody was running around with a knife. He actually stabbed somebody. One of these security officers was actually able to apply a tourniquet to the person that was injured because medical attention wasn't able to be rendered to him at that particular time, professional medical assistance at least anyway. And he ended up saving his life. And the other activities of the other officers, keeping people, safe and away from this person that was running around with a knife. I mean, truly examples of people that are heroes within the industry. Being a professional security officer means much more than a uniform or a badge. Professionalism has to do with the way you conduct yourself during your work assignments and your interactions. True professionals possess a number of important characteristics that can apply to virtually any type of a business. Whether you're choosing to remain in security as a career for the rest of your time working, or maybe you use security as a stepping stone into a different line of work. A lot of times when I was in the industry, I would see people go from security work into law enforcement. They're very parallel careers. But some of the things that you're going to learn as a security officer that you may not have exposure to in other industries, how to simply approach people, how to talk with people, all right, how to write an incident report maybe, situational awareness, how you respond to a major emergency incident, all right? Those are all things that you more than likely aren't going to learn in a lot of other different industries out there, but you can apply them not only in the security industry, but to anything that you do within your life. So let's examine some essential characteristics of a true professional or a true professional in the security industry. We want to look at your demeanor. Okay, you have to have confidence in order to be able to operate professionally as a security officer, but there's a fine line sometimes between confidence and cockiness, and sometimes people can't find that line. It's very important for us to seek that out as security officers and remember, to stay away from the cockiness, to be polite and well spoken, whether whoever you're interacting with. Even if it's somebody that's doing something that's inappropriate or improper, that you're trying to correct them, remember that you're the professional at all times in that conversation. An essential characteristic you need to understand about yourself as a security professional is your ability to keep your calm during a tense situation. It's important to remember how people will seek you out as a leader during an emergency. You are the authority figure. You're the person in uniform, the person that should know what to do. So understand and assess this about yourself. How well will you hold up during a crisis? What will you do when people will get nasty with you? And believe me, they will. Okay? Are you able to remain as the professional in those kind of circumstances? Putting that aside, it's easy to deal with people during normal everyday interactions, giving directions, helping them find different areas on your property, doing the normal day-to-day things. But being challenged when somebody is acting improperly, them getting mad at you, them not liking what you're saying to them calling you names, saying disparaging things about you, how are you going to react to that? Are you still able to remain as the professional in those type of situations? Something that security officers are often judged upon is the idea of them being competent. Do they really know and understand their jobs? Do they understand the properties that they work at? And part of this involves becoming an expert in your field, knowing the things that you're supposed to know, the specific training and post orders and supervisor directives. These are all the things that are going to allow you to operate as a professional when you need to, as opposed to looking for answers when you don't know them. Accountability. Professionals are accountable for their actions. You're going to make mistakes in your job environments from time to time. You have to do whatever you can in order to try to fix those mistakes. And you certainly don't want to cover them up or hide them and blame them on other people. As we said before, you're going to be working in a team environment a lot of times in security work. If people don't trust you, if you're blaming them for things that they aren't responsible for, do you really think that they're going to be the people that want to come and back you up when you need some help, when your personal safety is in danger? Or do you think that they're going to believe you're going to be there for them when they need you? Your etiquette, the way that you speak to people, whether it be in person, one-on-one contacts, or it's over the phone, remember to be a professional there as well. If somebody asks you for your name, you, as a security officer, inevitably you usually wear a name badge anyway, so it really doesn't matter necessarily, okay? Or what your badge number is, or anything else about you, and it, you're thinking in the back of your mind, okay, this person's going to try to come back at me and get me in trouble later on. All right, if you're doing the right thing from the beginning, identifying yourself is not going to matter. Okay, it's going to actually point you out as a professional to the people that are going to be assessing this afterwards. Watch your conversations with people. Be better listeners than speakers in your conversations with people. Okay, the idea of appearance and uniform standards for security officers. The public does judge and assess the competence of security officers, oftentimes based just on being able to see them, even before you get a word out of your mouth if you're interacting or making contact with them. So your uniform standards, your professional appearance, extremely important in this industry. Image and appearance, they do matter in our industry. Lacking professionalism, displaying poor appearance, failing to have good uniform standards. I don't have any scientific studies to show you that somebody is more likely to be verbally or physically challenged if they lack that professionalism about them. But I can tell you from working in the industry that it's true. People do assess you, especially if you have an adversary. They're going to assess you based on how you're presenting yourself initially. And it's very important for that initial presentation to be professional. If the agency that you're going to work for as a security officer, if they're giving you a uniform that doesn't fit properly, it's too loose, too tight, it doesn't fit you, it's the wrong size, anything that you're wearing and displaying out in the public, if it doesn't look proper, it doesn't fit properly, you want to point that out, okay? You want your company to correct that because, again, that's your image when you're going out there and presenting yourself to the public. Other things you want to consider. You're going to be doing a lot of walking as a security officer, so consider whatever footwear you're going to be choosing, all right? That is important. If you're not comfortable and you're not able to, you're concentrating on something that's personally affecting you, you're not going to do your job as well. All of this stuff matters. And lastly, but certainly not least, is your personal hygiene. Okay, are you taking care of yourself before you're presenting yourself out there in the public? All right, this often starts even before you come to work. All right, are you taking care of those personal hygiene matters that need to be addressed before you go out into the world? All right, and not only going out into the world, but going out into the world as an authority figure, going out and trying to be the person that's going to help somebody, correct somebody, so on and so forth. All right, everything about you needs to be in order before you're presenting yourself for duty. Okay, these last 8 items, I'm not going to go through each one of them individually. They are all outlined in your study guide. This is what is referred to as the Security Code of Ethics. Okay, so just make sure you're taking a look at these in your study guide. And again, all of this information and of course anything that we spoke about in this section can be formulated into an exam question. So you do want to take a few minutes to review these. And that's about all for this section. So thank you for your time.